Guys, welcome to Talking with TK. We've got a special episode today, something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a preview show with the Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fight coming up on August 26th at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So what I've done, I've gathered together 12 experts from across boxing and MMA to give me their views on the fight. The questions that we're going to cover, I wanted to keep it pretty consistent across the board. First question was it going to be a competitive fight? And if it is, can Conor McGregor win a round? I want to talk to him a lot. If people are underestimating his ability, we've seen this week a lot of talk around his sparring with Paulie Malignaggi. So it'll be interesting to see the take from other different people around different circles on exactly what they think Conor's ability and chances are to win. Next question will be what tactics they think will be effective against Floyd Mayweather. 3 would be Floyd's age and his inactivity. Will it be a major factor? 4, will Conor's punching power be significantly lower from switching to MMA, from the MMA 4-ounce gloves to boxing 8-ounce gloves that we've just heard they're going to be boxing in? 5, will there be any major issues for Conor to adjust from going 5x5 in UFC to having to box 3x12? Have you done any sparring with professional boxers? That's if you're an MMA fighter, or if you're a boxer, have you done any sparring against MMA fighters? And observations from both sides. 7, if Conor wins, is Floyd's legacy ruined? And 8 will be their prediction for the fight. Now, the people I've got speaking today, we've got a whole host of people from Australia and across the world. First one will be Mark Hunt, UFC, rising Australian superstar boxer George Kambosos, 10 times Muay Thai world champion John Wayne Parr, Chris Algieri, who was a former WBO lightweight world champion and also an undefeated kickboxing champion, Jacob Stitch Duran, Stitch, boxing and MMA's most highest profile cut man. He's watched so much live sport, I can't wait to get his opinion. Johnny Lewis, who is pretty much Australia's greatest ever trainer, he's been in the corner of Jeff Fennick, Costa Tszyu, and Jeff Harding. Next, we'll have Austin Trout, who's the former WBA super welterweight champion. Jake Shields, a veteran MMA fighter. He was actually in the corner of Nate Diaz when he had his 2 fights against Conor McGregor. Recently retired Tim Kennedy, who's probably the most dangerous man in the world. Tony Jeffries, who I really respect in opinion. He's a former professional boxer, was also a bronze medalist at the 2008 Olympic Games. And finally, Buzz Rutten. So Buzz, an absolute legend of MMA, is also doing a lot in the media scene. So he knows how to analyze fights, so it's going to be great to get his opinion on that. Before I get the guys on the show, just a big shout out to everyone tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show, or you can also check out my other show, the Vision Board Podcast. We interview a host of both boxers and MMA fighters, from guys like George Foreman, Evander Holyfield, Larry Holmes, Jeff Fennick, Anthony Mundine, Costa Tszyu from the boxing side. If you're interested in UFC side, guys like Hoist Gracie, the Shamrocks, Rob Whittaker, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Chris Weidman, a whole host of MMA guys have been on that. So please check out Talking with TK and also the Vision Board Podcast for a whole heap of different interviews. But let's get to the show now and enjoy. And let me know your picks. If you've seen it on Facebook, hit me up on Facebook. You can find my handle at Talking with TK, or Twitter, TKNell Fitness. Instagram, I'm at Tristan Nell. So please hit me up. Let me know exactly what you think is going to happen in the fight, because everyone's opinions counts. What I'm trying to do here is just bring you as many experts to give their picks. But at the end of the day, it's for you to get as much information so you can kind of make your own mind up what's going to happen. But it's going to be an interesting fight. Like, I'm going to have my little pick at the end. And if you have any feedback on the show, please let me know. But let's get to it. Next up on the show is Buzz Rutten. Buzz is an MMA legend and former UFC heavyweight world champion. and is a distinguished media personality and co-hosts Inside NBA, MMA, and also the Rutten and Ronaldo podcast. I know he's a big fan of Conor McGregor, so it's going to be an interesting perspective to see if he sides with him. But Bars is always a great chat. I was very lucky. I emailed him and he shot me. He wasn't able to get interviewed, but he shot me back exactly what I needed through all my 7 questions. So I really appreciate that from Bars. So here is Bars Rutten.
McGregor versus Mayweather. I put my money on McGregor. I'm going to believe Mystic Mac. That's what I'm going to do. He's going to say he's going to handle it within 4 rounds. He has been doing that before, making predictions, just like he did with Aldo. There's footage of him actually saying it in the dressing room that Aldo will come straight forward. He's going to knock him out immediately. So he's doing it. That's why I'm going to go with McGregor, also to drive everybody else crazy. And that's why I'm doing it. Now, I'm going to give you a few things. The build-up. McGregor's going to get inside his head. There's going to be a lot of pressure. That's going to start with that. Then on top of that, Mayweather wants to have that 50-0, right? He's going to face somebody who never boxed a professional boxing match in his life. There's a lot of pressure. Every single person he sees in his camp, out on the street, everybody is going to tell him, this is going to be an easy fight, dude. You're going to knock him out. This guy's not even a boxer. And the more people say that, the more you better do it. You cannot lose. If he loses to a guy who never fought a professional boxing match. If he wins, he's supposed to win. So McGregor always comes out as a winner anyway. His southpaw stance. In the past, Mayweather had problems with southpaws. Also problems with guys who attack, who go full in. Well, hopefully let's do that McGregor is going to do that as well. Although he's a counter striker, he might change this now, just for that reason. I heard about the age. I don't think age 40 years old is a big age, not for a guy like Mayweather. He's still a good boxer. The hands of Mayweather, apparently they're not such a great hands. I think everything he throws, the stance is different. He stands so wide. He throws punches from different angles. He doesn't box according to the rules. And most of the time, that can really make a big difference. So it's like when I spar with new guys. And the other fighter will tell you the same thing. Once you start sparring with new guys or guys who haven't been training for such a long time, you always get injured because they move different and they hit different and there's always something happening. That all combined makes me say that McGregor is going to win this fight. Oh yeah, I love it. And give it to me, guys. Come after me. Say, oh, it's not true. It's not true. I'm just going to go. And you know what? And even if I don't win, I really don't care. All right. Question number 2. I don't know if you're going to cut it up or not. That's why I had a little beat in between. Question number 2. No, that's because McGregor is going to win. What tactics do you think will be effective against Floyd? The tactics that McGregor should use, I would fake takedowns. Don't go for a takedown because apparently he's not going to get paid if he does anything like it. But also the clinch is different. Underhooks, pulling him down, throwing him to the side. It's all legal. You can all do it. You can fake a takedown. Even, listen, if I was Mayweather, I would in the corner while I'm waiting for the fight, while I'm waiting for the ring speaker to put them both together, I would start throwing some high kicks in the air just to mess with McGregor. You see what I mean? So they can both play games. I think McGregor plays the better games, head games. And let's see if he can capitalize on that. Boom. Floyd's age and inactivity, a major factor. I don't think that Floyd's age is a matter. It's going to play a big matter. I also don't think that his inactivity is not going to play a big factor. And for the simple fact that I made a comeback after 7 years of not competing and after 5 years of not working out. And that was at 42. And I felt great. Yes, I got all my injuries back and that was bothering me, but for the rest, mentally, physically, speed, power, everything was there. It was just I had a lot of injuries. So I don't think that it's going to play any factor, both of these things. Okay, punching power significantly lower, swing up. Okay, will Conor's punching power be significantly lower, switching from MMA 4-ounce gloves to boxing 10-ounce gloves? There will be no difference in power in the punches. 4-ounce gloves, 10-ounce gloves, doesn't matter. I did actually a test with that with sports science, and it doesn't have any difference. Maybe the penetration a little bit, because the glove is smaller, it penetrates to the body maybe better. But I also found out in sparring, I think it's easier to knock somebody out with a boxing glove, and it covers more surface than with an MMA glove. The only thing with a boxing glove is that there's less spaces in between to go through with an attack, because the glove is bigger than an MMA glove. But impact-wise, it's not going to make a difference. Like people say, Kambosos had a beard. And then people actually said that beard would null the effect of the punch. It will take the power out. I go, yeah, it's about the same as putting a plastic bag over somebody's head and then get hit. That's about the same padding as you're going to have with a beard. So let's forget about these things. Will there be any major issues adjusting for Conor going from 5-minute rounds? Okay. For Conor, it's going to be much easier. MMA is so hard because of the takedowns, and you're working your core the whole time. When I came back, and like again, I said it, 7 years I didn't compete, 5 years I didn't train, I just started really slowly. So I said, let's start with boxing. From the get-go, good 10 rounds or 3 minutes, just boxing, just using my hands. Once you start adding kicks, that's a bigger muscle, and you're using your core, that takes more power. Once you start adding takedowns, that will take more power. Only your hands, it's much easier. So his stamina is going to be okay. It's going to be better than it is in MMA. I guarantee you that. If Conor wins, is Floyd's legacy ruined? Oh, yes. Of course, when Conor wins, Floyd's legacy is going to be ruined. There's going to be a second fight. But I think that if I was McGregor, it's probably already in the contract, so they build it already in. But if I was McGregor, if this will happen, then it's going to be a second fight. But then I would say, okay, that's okay. But if you win that fight, I want you to fight you at MMA rules. Throw the ball back into his court, see what he has to say. That's what I do. All right? Godspeed, everybody. Party on.
I introduced Mark Hunt. Mark is an Australian MMA pioneer, and he's currently ranked number 6 in the UFC heavyweight division. Mark has a record of 13-11 and also won the 2001 K1 World Grand Prix. So here's my chat with Mark Hunt.
Yeah. Now let's just turn our attention a little bit to Conor and Floyd. The press conference, they all started this morning. They're firing off bombs at each other. Is this a fight that interests you, man?
Well, it does, actually. It's actually really great because, it's the biggest fight in history, and it's weird because it's, I said before, like 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had Mayweather talk about even fighting someone like Mayweather, and that just goes to show how far the UFC's pushed mixed martial arts, and everyone loves Conor McGregor, and I love him or hate him, he's like Mayweather, but it's not McGregor's forte.
Yeah.
He loses a lot of weapons. Everything here is for Mayweather. I think Conor's got a great chance of winning. Everyone's got a great chance of winning if they fight in that arena. But, you lose a lot of weapons. It's only boxing. And I love boxing, so, it's going to be a great competition. I'm looking forward to it. So these guys talk a lot of shit, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, mate. They make Anthony Mundine look like a mute, don't they? Jesus Christ.
It's great, but I was sitting there when I was watching it, because I didn't normally watch that shit, but I watched it, and there was no sound. Those guys are just, their mouths.
Mouthing off. Yeah. I was the same, man. I was in the office. I didn't want to put it up, and then I'm just seeing them mouth off. I'm going, what the fuck is going on?
You can see Peter in the background just having a laugh, going, what the fuck? Yeah, I don't know. I think Mayweather's going to win the fight, but I'm hoping Conor gets a good punch in him and knocks out. The smart money bet is on McGregor. You're not going to win any money if you bet on Mayweather.
Yeah.
Mayweather's odds are too high.
Too high, yeah.
It's all in Mayweather's world. If it was an MMA fight, of course it would be the opposite way around. But like every fight, it's a fight, and you still got a chance to win. So yeah. I mean, I don't know, who knows? See what happens. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know who's going to win. I hope McGregor wins, but I think Mayweather's going to beat him up.
Yeah, actually, this is a good question for you because you and Floyd are around the same age, but you're a lot more active than Floyd is. He hasn't fought for 2 years. Do you think that'll be a factor?
I don't know, man. He hasn't. I don't. Do you actually think that Mayweather would like to put a 1 on his record and especially lose to not a boxer?
Yeah, to a novice, yeah.
Someone that hasn't got no experience in boxing. That's ridiculous, man. It's all about the money. That's what it is. That's what this is about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. What about, I know for yourself, in MMA you wear the 4-ounce glove. Boxing they're going to be wearing 10 ounce. Does that take a lot away from Conor's power at all?
I actually think Conor has to work a lot harder.
Yeah.
With those gloves on. With MMA gloves you can be more precise. You can't, you like boxing with those padded gloves, you can pepper. But with the MMA gloves, you've got to be more precise to get injury on the person. But when you do hit them, it's still effective. But I think with the boxing gloves, it takes repetitive punches unless you get them correctly with a punch.
Yeah. What about going from 5 times 5-minute rounds to boxing 3 times 12? Is that a major sort of issue for Conor?
Well, I think it's still striking in the end. You still, depends on how your work rate is. I think what differs here is there's no wrestling involved.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say as well.
Yeah, that's the difference between boxing. They can cruise around. Even though it's not easy, as soon as you put in wrestling, it's a different fitness. So, I think Conor might be easier.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, in your own training, have you done much like sparring with professional boxers? And if you have, what adjustments did you have to make to kind of be competitive with them?
Well, I mean, I won my world title 18 years ago. It was a striking world title, the K1 world title.
Yeah, K1, yeah.
And I can cruise with striking all day. I cheat a lot because sometimes I get a bit lazy, but when you put in mixed martial arts, you can't cheat, because they're coming wrestling and grabbing you, so you have to work. With striking, you can dance around, you can play around a bit, you have room to move.
That's very, very interesting. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat today, man. And I'll let you know when it's...
Next up, the rising star of Australian boxing, George Kambosos. George is currently ranked WBA number 7 in the lightweight division. He has a great style and he has a record of 12-0. He's got 6 KOs and he was also the lead sparring partner for Manny Pacquiao in his preparation recently for his fight with Jeff Horn. So here's our chat with George.
So, George, you've just told me you've watched the press conference. We're both very, very interested in this fight. Do you have a prediction?
Look, Floyd Mayweather is going to pretty much outbox him the whole time. If he wants to turn that up, I reckon he can knock him out as well. Look, it's 2 different sports. I like McGregor, and obviously I like Floyd. If it's in the UFC, if it's in the octagon, McGregor, knocks him out. But it's not, unfortunately. It's in a boxing ring. It's not in a UFC octagon. So, Floyd's on another level. He's fought so many world champions, it's a mismatch pretty much.
Yeah. Floyd's sometimes a slow starter. Do you think if it's going to be competitive at any stage, you'll be earlier in the fight?
Yeah, if there is an opportunity and a chance for McGregor to somehow pull anything out, it's got to be in the first 3-4 rounds. Like McGregor said in his press conference, he goes, "I'm going to knock you out in 4." Well, that's pretty much he gave his game plan away just there. He's going to come out flying and try to look for anything. Don't forget, boxing is 12 rounds, 3 minutes, and that's non-stop. You got to be fully focused and aware of all the punches. And it's very draining. MMA is obviously 5-minute rounds by 5, so it's a lot different. You got the ground game, you got different games in the UFC, so you can take a little bit more time to rest. And then it's not the same as boxing. It's 2 different sports. So if he does have a chance, he's got to really come out looking for that shot.
Let's turn around a little bit because I know you've had a couple of southpaws. Now, just take it from Floyd's point of view. In terms of a southpaw coming at you, what adjustments did you make when you fought a southpaw?
I've fought a couple of southpaws, and obviously I've just finished camp with Manny Pacquiao, who's probably the all-time great southpaw ever. Look, the adjustments you've got to do is obviously you've got to move more to if I'm Floyd, and he's fought so many southpaws, he knows what to do. But for the general public who want to know what Floyd's game plan is, he's going to move a lot to the left. He's going to restrict McGregor's left hand, his power hand. He's going to lead a lot with his right hand, catch him all night with that right hand. One of my favourite shots against the southpaw is that right uppercut. You can tap him with the jab, and as soon as they lean forward, you hit him with that nice uppercut like I did against Kambosos.
I remember it. Yep.
So it's pretty much that, and obviously your left hook and your right hand are your weapons in fighting the southpaw. Your jab's going to be a bit harder to land. You got to try to time it and set it up because obviously the way they're moving.
What about Floyd's 42? He's been inactive for a couple of years. Do you think that's going to be much of a factor there, George?
Look, no. Floyd's always, you look at him, he's always fit, he's always training, and it'd probably take him maybe 1 or 2 weeks of solid training to get back to full form. Obviously, he's older. He's a lot older, and I've just been in camp with Manny, and Manny's 38. It takes a lot longer for these guys to recover. They're not young kids, and they're not young guys coming up. McGregor is younger, so look, I think his recovery's going to be a lot better than what Floyd is in his camp. But it's not going to make a difference, Once Floyd's in that ring, he's been in so many times, he knows exactly what to do.
Yeah, George, have you ever tried the MMA 4-ounce gloves at all?
No, I've never tried them, and I don't want to try them. The only time I use my if I'm having a street fight, the only times I use my hands. But I don't do too many street fights these days.
Well, you're about to be a dad, mate. I think you'll be going through no street fights now, buddy.
That's right, no street fights. And like I said, I get paid to fight. I don't fight for free.
Yeah, exactly right. Do you think it's going to be a major difference in Conor's punching power, considering that he's going from a 4-ounce glove to a 10-ounce glove?
Yeah, 100%. It's a bigger glove. I know, just watching the press conference just then, Mayweather just gone off and said, we can fight in 8s, we can fight in 4s, and I know McGregor kind of just said, well, let's do it in 4s. So, look, in my view, I thought it should have been in 4s. Look, have the boxing rules, but put them in 4-ounce gloves. I don't know if maybe that's even worse for McGregor because, Floyd's a very accurate fighter and it's boxing rules, so you can't grab, you can't wrestle, can't tackle, so, it would make a difference, but they're in 10s, and obviously Floyd's gay side, so he can control whatever he wants.
Yeah. George, have you done much sparring with MMA fighters that want a little bit of technique work on their boxing at all?
No, not really. I stay away from, obviously, guys like that. They're awkward, and their style is totally different to boxing, and you end up you're more in a wrestling match and grappling match compared to nice, clean boxing. And when you're preparing for big fights like myself, you want the best sparring you can get in the world, not MMA guys.
Yeah, of course.
You can end up copping head clashes and cuts, and it just can postpone your fight, obviously. So
yeah,
kind of stay clear
from you actually.
Stay clear from I stay clear from the MMA guys, but and the dumb fighters. So if any MMA guy wants to step up to I can kick their ass anyway.
But you just said it. They are quite awkward. And do you think it will take long for Floyd to kind of figure out Conor's style? And there could be head clashes. Conor is quite a little bit bigger. You just never know what might happen, eh?
Well, he is bigger. From watching that press conference and seeing him face to face, he is a lot bigger. But Mayweather's fought the bigger guys. So the only thing is his unorthodox style. He does switch a lot, and he's got these different kind of movements. But Mayweather's kind of seen all these different kind of moves. Like Maidana was a very awkward kind of guy, and obviously he's seen all these guys. He knows these styles. He'll find a way, and obviously I think the whole pressure of the fight and the pace of the fight that Mayweather's going to try to push it. Conor's just going to obviously crumble.
Yeah. Conor, if he does somehow manage to score a win, Floyd's 49-0. If that happens, what do you think happens to Floyd's legacy?
Oh, it's a big dent into his legacy. Obviously, it doesn't change the fact that he's beaten so many world champions. He's a 12-time world champion in I think five weight divisions, and that's history. That never changes. As a future Hall of Famer, but it does put a big dent losing to UFC guy on their debut, but very, very, very hard to see happening. But look, it's a fight game. You never know what happens.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's boxing. You know, the fight game takes one punch, and you know the whole fight swings. He could hurt Floyd and jumps on him and ends the fight. You never know. But you know, it would put a huge dent in Mayweather's career. But then again, it sets up for a rematch, and they can make even more money.
An absolute living legend coming up on the show. We've got John Wayne Parr. He's going to have an interesting analysis when you consider he's a legend of Australian combat sports, 10 times world Muay Thai champion, where he had 129 fights for 97 wins. He also had a successful boxing career where he transitioned midway through that actual Muay Thai championship. He had 10 wins and 3 losses. He also won the Australian middleweight championship, and he fought a number of great boxers, including Sakio Bika. So it's going to be interesting just to get his perspective on the different transitions. And I think if you're going to be listening to one opinion, John Wayne Parr is the one not to miss.
Yeah, Wayne, I think you're probably the best person to speak to about, because I know that you left Muay Thai and then you went to boxing. What was the hardest thing you found about that transition moving across?
I was doing really well when I just focused on boxing for the first 11 fights, and then I got into a bit of a rut where I thought, I feel in the gaps. I'll do a Muay Thai fight. Oh, there's a boxing fight. So I go Muay Thai boxing. And my biggest mistake was crossing over. So I had a Muay Thai fight, had a boxing fight, had a Muay Thai fight, and then I fought Sakio Bika. And that was the game changer. Yeah, big puncher. The first 3 rounds, I was doing everything right. I was flipping and moving and doing my best. And then because I was in deep water against such a credible opponent, all of a sudden, without even me acknowledging it, all of a sudden I started going back into my Muay Thai stance. My hands were a little bit bit wider than they should have been. I was a bit more flat-footed than instead of bouncing up on my balls of my feet. I sort of sabotaged myself by crossing over. So if I had just stuck to boxing, I think I would have a much better chance against Dick there. But I was just happy I went the distance with him. So and then he knocked about 3 or 4 fights later, he won the WBC World Championship. So it was no slouch.
Yeah, definitely not. Is that a bit of a message that you have to Conor that that first 3 or 4 rounds will be very, very important in terms of him staying on his game? Because you just talked about it as well, and you probably had a much easier kind of transition than he did. Is that a concern of yours?
I think the hardest part is going from 0 fights to 12 rounds, because I started my first few fights were 4 rounds, then worked my way up to 6, and then fighting 8, and then even just going from 6 to 8, it's like, oh man, that's an extra 6 minutes, and to get your head out the whole idea about fighting 12 rounds, it's like, oh man. And then you see the ring card go past. It's like round 3, round 7, round 9, round 11. It's like it's so long compared to like a normal fight. So I think, and kind of gasses too. There's no hiding the fact that once he gasses, he doesn't have a very good poker face either. You can see his big breast. He drops his hands. His body language is terrible. And Floyd's the master, so he can fight 12 rounds all day, even if he's had 2 years off. He'll be able to maintain and play the game, and so I think once he gets past round 6, I think just the idea of, oh man, I've got 6 more rounds to go, I'm only halfway, then that's going to play a big mind games on Conor himself.
Do you think Conor can win a round?
Ooh, good question. Depends. I really can't see it happening. But there's always that chance that if Mayweather takes his foot off the pedal and gets a little bit careless, maybe. Conor punches hard, and by the looks of things in the press conference, Conor's huge. So if he does land,
yeah. Wayne, how old are you this year?
I just turned 41.
Yeah, so you're similar age to Floyd. Obviously, the major difference is you're very, very active, and I'm sure that he's doing training on the side, but not to the, you're still competing. Do you think Floyd's age at all, especially after what we've seen with Manny Pacquiao, could that be a factor at all?
I don't think so. From my own experience, being 41, I feel just as strong now as I did when I was 25. I'm still running with the boys every day, and they're struggling to keep up with me. I'm sparring all the late teens, early 20 guys, and still winning. I'm not losing rounds. My performance on the pads is my work rate's just as good, if not better, than most of the boys in the gym also. So it's just your mindset. If you believe you can do anything. And Floyd's that sort of guy. I'm undefeated. I'm the man. I'm boxing. Blah blah blah. So there's no way knowing he's going to let Floyd try and Conor steal any rounds just for his own legacy. He's so stubborn that he thinks he's the king. So it's going to be interesting. Even though I think Floyd could win quite easily, I'm still going to tune in. There's no way knowing that you'd miss it in the world. I think it's the fight that stops the nations.
Wayne, you know your new promotion now, you use 4-ounce MMA gloves, right?
Yes, in a cage.
How did you feel? Because when you were kickboxing / Muay Thai, what was that, 8-10-ounce gloves?
Yes. Yep. So yeah,
that transition for yourself, personal experience. How much of your powers changed since you've gone down? And then can you give us a bit of a idea of maybe Conor putting on 10-ounce gloves now, how much of a restriction it's going to have on his power?
Yeah, I think with the MMA gloves, it's a more of a raw feeling. You know that every single punch is a potential KO punch, whereas the big gloves feel, even though they're still only 8 or 10 ounce, and because Conor's contracted to wear 10s, it'll be almost like sparring gloves, compared to MMA gloves. They're going to be a bit more big, bit more bulky. The only added thing that's better is you can protect your head a lot easier than MMA gloves. And it depends what brand it is too. If you're wearing the Cleto Rays, it's nothing but knuckles anyway. So yeah, it's a good one, good question.
So it just depend maybe on the brand that. Do you think Floyd will probably be? He usually wears. What does he wear?
I think he wears the bigger ones because he's got fragile hands.
He does too.
I think he wears
it'll be interesting to see what's in the contract, isn't it? Because Everlast gloves are quite small too, right?
Yeah, Everlast very.
The Rays are very, very tiny. They're Mexican gloves, aren't they?
They've changed the rules now. You're allowed to wear whatever gloves as long as they're 10s. So you always see Grant versus Cletos or Cletos versus Title fight gloves.
Yeah.
Or
That's what he wears. He wears Grants.
Grants, yes.
Yeah, he wears Grants.
Is it Winning from Japan? They're good gloves also,
Yeah,
but the Cletos are nothing. Cletos are nothing but knuckles. So I dare say Conor, being the man that he is, he'd want to go for a puncher's glove. So that'd be the glove I'd be choosing if I was him.
Yeah. If Conor does actually manage to win, with Floyd being 49-0, is his legacy ruined?
Oh yeah, for sure. It'd be pretty embarrassing. And then that's the fight everyone remembers. You're only as good as your last fight, and then to lose to Conor McGregor, who's 0-0 as a professional boxer, that would be just shattered. His legacy would be just shattered. That hasn't even come into my mind yet because I can't see Floyd losing. But the whole idea, if he does lose, damn. And then I've seen a little bit of a snippet saying Conor was yelling at Floyd Senior, telling him, "Oh, you made a big mistake. You picked the wrong guy. You should have just let him be retired." It's going to be very interesting. Yeah, it's and then at the same time, if Floyd Mayweather wins, does he really count that as a win because he's fighting a guy that's 0-0? Does he really go to 50-0 as a professional fighter? Does that help his legacy as well? Does he become the greatest of all time because he went 50-0 against the kid with 0-0?
Yeah. But are you surprised that they even sanctioned the fight there, Wayne? Because when you consider it, just say you're someone like yourself who's been fighting for 20 plus years and your record's outstanding. If they put someone like 0-0 in front of you, there's no way that it gets sanctioned.
Yeah, pretty rough. It's supposed to be a karate black belt guy wanted to jump into a Muay Thai fight with me after I've had 130 fights. It wouldn't be very clever. So yeah. from that aspect, it's like, damn. But I don't know. This is more than just a fight. It's more of just a show. It's more of just a novelty. It's a novelty event. It's not a fight. It's you can't really classify it as a. I don't know. You look at you look at the Canelo Mayweather fight. And you think Canelo was 44-0 at that stage, and then he couldn't barely touch Mayweather, and then you got guys like Pacquiao that could barely touch him. And they've only boxed their whole careers and they couldn't touch him. So I just don't understand how this guy's going to come from obscurity and just all of a sudden beat the greatest ever. It's just a crazy.
You touched on Floyd's hands before. Do you think Floyd's deceptively strong? Because you just touched on it. Canelo's a bull, and you ever look at some of the other guys he's fought. Miguel Cotto, he's a bull. And these guys can't get close to him. He seems to be able to pop him off with pot shots, and I don't know. Do you think he's just deceptively strong?
I think he's got amazing counters. I think he gets in people's heads. So everyone that fights Mayweather, they always have the same game plan. I'm just going to come out. I'm going to bully him. I'm going to throw non-stop punches the whole time. I'm going to back him up. And then you watch the fights, and then every single time by round 3, Mayweather's opponent stopped throwing. He every time they do a jab, he pulls back and adds that straight right counter. He's always slipping and dodging and moving and countering, and they get so fearful of every time they throw, they get hit that they stop throwing. And then they're standing there sitting there like a sitting duck. The only one that really pushed through is Oscar and Medina. The way that he was very good. But everyone else, and Mosley, of course, Mosley fought Mayweather very well as well, knocking him down. But but everyone else, they just seem to just stand there. Once they realise they can't hit him, they just stand there. So Conor's going to need a strong will set to be hit and to keep coming forward and not giving up, especially in that deep water of that round 7, 8, 9, 10. That's going to be the real test.
Okay, final question, mate. I'm putting you on the spot. What's your prediction for the fights?
I think Mayweather wins pretty much every round. Even though it drives me crazy to say it, because I really like Conor. I think he's a champion, but I think he's out of his league. I think the press conferences are going to be more exciting than the actual fight. Once the bell rings, the realization of a guy with 0-0 is going to definitely. But the war of words, all Conor. The actual fight, all Floyd.
Next up on the podcast, we've got Chris Algieri. Now, Chris very similar to John Wayne Parr in the thing that he's got that path in both boxing and kickboxing. So he's going to really have an interesting perspective. In terms of his background, he's a former WBO light welterweight world champion. He holds notable wins over guys like Ruslan Provodnikov and also Emmanuel Taylor. He's also shared the ring with both Manny Pacquiao, and he tested Amir Khan right to his limits. So prior to boxing, he was an undefeated ISKA world welterweight and super welterweight kickboxing champ. So it's going to be great to have him on the show and get his perspective on the fight. So here it is.
I mean, it's hard not to. It's all over the place. So
yeah, what are you thinking so far?
I don't know, man. I don't really like what I'm seeing. It's very showy. It's not what I'm used to when it comes to thinking about a classy boxing promotion.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying it's nearly more of an entertainment, sort of like a WWE style than more of a boxing match. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it has that WWE entertainment feel to it, more so than an actual fight.
Yeah, well, Floyd, every time he hits the stage, it's like he says 2 words and then he walks away like a heel in the wrestler. Like I've seen so many wrestlers do that. It's funny, but it's hard to take seriously at times.
Yeah, it seems like he's taking a page out of Vince McMahon's book about how to be shit. But
mate, have you had a chance to watch much of UFC and watch much Conor McGregor?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always trained with a lot of UFC guys and MMA guys, so I've been watching for years, and it's a sport that's grown so tremendously over the past couple of years. It's everywhere. So definitely been keeping up with it. It's not my favorite combat sport, but I still stay on top of it.
Yeah, Chris, I know you're going to offer actually some really interesting insights because, you were a kickboxer first and then a boxer after that. I spoke to John Wayne Parr a couple of days ago, and he was just talking about a few of the struggles, especially earlier on when he switched to boxing, and he was just saying his biggest challenge was when he was fatigued, he would switch back to what he used to know because being a boxer just wasn't natural to him at the time. Mm-hmm. For yourself in your first few fights, what was the hardest transition going from kickboxing to boxing?
So just piggybacking what John Wayne Parr was saying, I'm a huge fan of his, by the way. That guy's awesome. But the transitioning back to what it's funny because even when I was kickboxing, I was much more of a boxer.
Really?
I would, whenever I got into trouble in kickboxing fights, I would always revert to my punching. And I was always kind of known as a guy who had good boxing, more so than being like a traditional, kickboxer. So for me, the transition was probably easier than most. But that being said, it was still extremely difficult and probably took me 10 or 15 fights to figure out, honestly. The speed at which a boxing match is conducted is so much faster. The fatigue rate is so much quicker. It really, because punches they take up smaller units of time. A kick takes up, 2-3 times what a punch takes, if not more. So guys can throw combinations with multiple punch techniques and strikes in the time that it would take for a guy to throw a single kick. So it definitely changes the conditioning aspect of it for sure. The pace is different.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic as well because obviously Conor's going to go from doing 5 times 5-minute rounds to boxing 3 times 12, and that's another thing that when I spoke to John Wayne about, he said that it wasn't the first kind of 4-5 rounds. It was just when the ring girl went past with round 6 and 7, he started shitting himself because he'd never been there before. What was it like for you?
Just like that. First couple times that I kept seeing, those rounds fly by and they go by pretty quick. You end up, you're in deep water and you're out there and that gas tank is going down, and you really got to really, really, really focus on what you're doing there. So I think that was a big thing for me in the beginning, was really focusing on my conditioning so I didn't have that oh shit moment in the middle of rounds of a professional fight.
Do you think Floyd's age and inactivity is going to be much of a factor?
It's hard to say. I can't really say with or without confidence about that. You don't know. People get old overnight.
We saw it Pacquiao, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I saw it in the first round with Pacquiao last fight. I was like, wow, he looks slow compared to what he normally looks like. So it's one of those things. We don't know. We don't know who's going to show up there. Is it going to be 40-year-old Floyd, or is it going to be the Floyd of old?
Well, just imagine if he turned up the Floyd that versed against you, man. Like that was one of the best I've seen him look.
Yeah.
And that was just one of those things. You just got the wrong Manny at the wrong time. And
I had calling me the night of the Horn fight, like, you beat this Manny, and I was like, you say what you want, it is what it is, but I don't want to think too much on these kind of things. You gotta.
Yeah, exactly. But when you fight a legend like that, it's like, well, if I could have got 38-year-old Manny to turn up instead of 31-year-old in his peak and thinking he's just invincible Manny, I would pick 38-year-old Manny for sure.
Things would be different.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do you think Conor can win a round at all?
I think he can win a round, but I think
especially
it's
early, right? That's what I'm kind of getting. Like early on, Floyd takes a little bit of time to kind of see what the opponent's doing. He could actually take a round.
Yeah, I think Floyd's going to make him work, especially in the early rounds, to make him work and make him miss and kind of tire him out. And I think that McGregor could win a round off of that, or a round or two, based on just activity and being able to do more than Floyd's doing at the time. Although I do believe that Floyd will be setting things up for the next couple rounds.
Yeah. Chris, have you had much experience using any of those small kind of 4-ounce gloves at all?
Yeah, I have actually. So I actually started my professional boxing career in a kickboxing / MMA gym. And even when I was, a kickboxer and switching over, I spent a lot of time sparring with guys who were training for MMA fights. And I do even remember I had a long layoff in between some of my boxing fights, and I always still train my kicks. So I decided to help some of my teammates out with their MMA fights, and I wrestled too. So they would use me for their wrestling and takedowns, and I would throw on the small gloves and punch with them and trade with them and actually do some MMA sparring. So I do have experience working around with MMA guys.
What's the difference punching with those small gloves compared to boxing traditionally, the 10-ounce gloves?
I was blown away at how fast I was with the smaller gloves on, and also how easy it was to hit guys who were actually good defensively in MMA. They're just not used to seeing punches coming at the angles that a boxer throws them, the speed at which they throw them, and especially the combination punching. You don't see a lot of combination punching in MMA. Look at Conor McGregor; he doesn't throw a lot of combos, especially with just his hands. So I think that's going to be a big difference and an eye opener for him.
Yeah, in terms of, he'll be slower and he won't be hitting as hard. Mark Hunt actually said to me the other day, he's going to have to throw a hell of a lot more punches to actually do the same amount of damage. Do you reckon that's pretty true?
1,000% true. Those little gloves, man, you've got even every part of your hand can leave a mark. But when you have a glove that's encasing your every fingertip and every knuckle, it's going to be a lot different. Not to say that an 8-ounce glove is not extremely dangerous and people get knocked out and cut with them all the time, but it's definitely going to be a very different with a proper hand wrap and a boxing glove over that hand.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned sparring and training with MMA fighters. In terms of when they went and tried to spar you and then boxing, did they struggle a lot? Yeah, it's and more so the pace than anything. Like I've sparred with guys who were actually multiple weight classes above me in MMA while I was boxing, and it always seems like it's the pace and the fatigue setting in that really makes the difference. Their punches are definitely different. The way they set things up are different. The way they move is a little funky, and when you're expecting certain things, it can be tricky. I was actually watching a video of Lomachenko sparring with I know you're talking about.
Dillashaw.
Dillashaw. Yeah.
And it looked like how most boxing with UFC or MMA fighters looks. It's in the beginning, the boxer's a little tentative and kind of trying to figure out where things are. Maybe got hit with a couple fewer shots here and there, but after the pace gets kind of sorted out, it's usually just the boxer, completely having his way.
Yeah. If Conor was to win, Chris, do you think Floyd's legacy is ruined?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's one of those. It's definitely going to be tarnished. But I mean, it's such a weird matchup at this point. It's you got a guy coming from a different sport who's never fought in this sport before, fighting the best guy in the world, but at the same time, he's fighting a guy who's been retired for 2 years and he's 40 years old. So how much can you really take from this kind of matchup? At the end of the day, it's a matchup that doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter for either sport. It's not gonna take boxing fans who are going to now go watch Conor McGregor fight MMA. It's not going to take MMA fans who are now going to go watch Floyd Mayweather box. So it's a very strange whole scenario, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, final question, man. Your final prediction for the fight?
I've been getting asked this a lot lately, and my simple answer is they're boxing, so the boxer's going to win.
Yeah. Do you think Floyd's got enough power to actually stop him?
I do.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's going to be one of those things where people. Floyd's not known as a power puncher, but the guy's fought 20-something world champions in a row at the highest level.
When you think about some of the punches that he's fought, right, and he seems to simply keep them off. Like he fought Miguel Cotto, and he's an absolute beast. He couldn't touch him.
Total killer.
And then you got Maidana. He was early. He was very competitive. At the same time, he punches very hard, but Floyd kept him off pretty easy as well. De La Hoya, everyone. It just seems. Do you think maybe Floyd is strong? Without being overly strong. Without some of you guys have got really big KO artists out there, but at the same time, he's just got something in his hands that does accumulate, and if he hits you flush, he's going to hit you flush, right?
At the highest level of this sport, you're talking about guys who are masters with 2 hands. Everyone hits hard enough. People ask me, like, "Oh, does Amir Khan hit hard?" Yeah, of course. Everyone hits hard. You know, you guys you're in the same weight class. You're the best of the best. You're talking about the 0.001% of the world. All of these guys hit hard. Floyd hits hard. And I don't think there's ever been a question about his physical strength. He walked down Shane Mosley after getting hurt and really took it to him. No one's ever really pushed Floyd around. So I don't think strength is so much an issue. He's not a one-punch knockout guy, but at the same time, he's a really good body puncher. He's an extremely precise puncher, and I think that's going to be the major difference. He also reads people really well. He knows when they're getting tired, when they're out of breath, when they're hurt a little bit, when they're sucking wind. He's going to read everything that McGregor gives him.
Next up, we've got Austin Trout. Now, Austin is a former WBA super welterweight champion. He's also going to be fighting for the IBF title against Jarrett Hurt on September 30. So he's still well in his prime. He holds notable victories against Miguel Cotto and also Rigoberto Alvarez. He was also a pretty good TV boxing analyst, and he also lives around that Albuquerque area. So I know he does a lot of sparring with MMA guys through Jackson's gym. So it's going to be very interesting just to hear his perspective on exactly what has gone on when he's sparred guys from the MMA side. But, you know, Austin being still in his prime, it's going to be, and also a TV analyst, you know, I think he's going to bring some great points to the table. So here's our chat with Austin Trout.
Yeah, and just like I thought, I knew this fight builder was going to be amazing because Floyd, who's got he's quick-witted with his mouth, very talkative. And then you got Conor McGregor, who's also very fast with the mouth, with his speech,
Yeah. In terms of, have you had much of a chance to watch much of Conor McGregor at all?
Yeah, definitely. Of course, he came on the scene when he knocked out Aldo. That's what kind of really threw him into superstardom.
Yeah. Do you think people underestimate just how good he might be?
No. What I think they might underestimate is his grit. He's gonna make it a fight. He's really gonna try to take Floyd's head off. And he's also very dedicated to his craft. So Floyd is gonna have to get his respect in the ring, I think.
Yeah. What tactics do you think he'll be using, particularly early against Floyd?
He's gonna do what Oscar started to do, what Miguel Cotto started to do too. He's gonna just, excuse my language, fuck him up. I think that's gonna be the tactics.
Yeah. Austin, how old are you this year?
I turned 32 September.
You're pretty much in your prime. So, in terms of Floyd's age at 40 and being inactive, you probably, in terms of when you were inactive, what was the major struggles when you first came back?
Just, ring rust, trying to, get back to that weight, getting used to the whole camp, kind of life, the structure and discipline, because boxing is my structure, if it wasn't for boxing, I probably wouldn't be on no type of schedule, and my discipline that I've learned in my life for all other aspects really came from boxing. If I wanted to put my mind and put some real discipline into something, I had to take it and revert it into a boxing type match. Like, well, this ain't nothing different from you training from a fight. So study, study this math or whatever. Save that money. So so when there's no boxing going on, if I don't have a fight like I haven't, thank God I've been in the gym because I don't like getting fat. Yeah, I really had to mentally make myself have some kind of discipline and structure so that I didn't fall off too far, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Austin, I know you've done a lot of training with guys from MMA. In terms of when they're sparring with you in boxing, what's the major differences and what's your observations in terms of their struggles?
Well, one, when it's a boxing match sparring session, there's things that I can get away with, position wise, that you couldn't get away with in MMA. Crouching low to come up and things like that. So, when I do get in these positions that I'm able to get away with, it catches them off guard and I'm able to strike easier because it comes from a position that, they would probably usually have, I don't know, taken me to the ground or something to that effect. So that's why it's hard to compare because, I see the things that I get away with that wouldn't be able to get away with if they were able to kick or grapple.
Do you think
Also,
it's going to be...
also
Yeah, sorry, keep going.
I also noticed another major thing, and this is no shade to MMA fighters because, aside from Carlos Condit, MMA fighters don't take a punch the same way a boxer does. And honestly, I'm not saying that they can't take a punch. They can. There's a lot of tough MMA dudes that have a good chin, but still they react more so to the punch than boxers do. Whether it's their head popping up or, they show that, the fight shot was a good shot. And I think that's because a lot of MMA fighters who have a big wrestling or grappling or jiu-jitsu type background aren't accustomed to being punched in the face, since the age of 10, as a lot of fighters have. I started boxing at 10, so we've been punched in the face and been accustomed to it a lot longer than most MMA fighters have as well.
That's actually an interesting point you bring up, Austin. What about going from 5 times 5-minute rounds to boxing 3 times 12? Do you think that's a major issue for Conor?
Well, no. He's got the training camp to get ready for that. And, 5-minute rounds ain't no slack in itself, even though if you put it added collectively, you end up doing more boxing than MMA. But still, he's in camp. I don't think that's going to be a major issue. I think the pace may be an issue, though, because, with 5-minute rounds, and especially in MMA where there's a lot of grappling and a lot of stale moments, the boxing is a little bit more faster. And they don't just end up in knockouts or tap outs. You're going to have to go the distance, especially with Floyd.
Do you think Floyd's got the power to stop him?
Again, only saying that because MMA fighters are not accustomed to getting punched as boxers are. I do think Floyd has the power. I mean, there's not a person that he fought, aside from, I guess, maybe Canelo. But even Canelo, he stopped him in his tracks with that right hand. I mean, he's always stunned everybody he's fought. He just didn't have that killer instinct to go get him.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point you bring up. Canelo, I know you fought Canelo. Floyd seemed to keep him off relatively easy. In terms of when Canelo was coming forward towards yourself, how hard was it to keep Canelo off?
When he was coming forward, it wasn't really hard. I was turning him. And then after that 4th round, he stopped coming forward and I had to go get him. That's when it got tricky for me. That's when it was dicey. He had better footwork than I anticipated. And he also was able to use his footwork, which I didn't think would have had to happen. So, it wasn't hard to keeping him off of me. I mean, even that round I got knocked down, he tried to swarm me and, I ended up banging his ass back with some good left hands.
If Conor was to win, Austin, do you think Floyd's legacy's ruined?
No. Yeah, it is in a way. His legacy is definitely ruined. Like, I mean, even though, he has wins over the likes of Oscar De La Hoya, you know what? I don't think that really ruins Floyd's legacy in a sense because he's got some great names under his belt. Yeah, but that definitely propels Conor McGregor's legacy into some Bruce Lee status.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Austin, have you ever tried the MMA 4-ounce gloves and trained in them at all?
No, I have not.
Do you think there'll be a major difference in Conor's power and speed going from 4 to 10s?
Yep, I do. And honestly, I don't think he's that fast. But even with the 4 ounces, so 8-ounce gloves, yeah, I think it's going to slow him down dramatically.
All right, Austin, final question, man. What's your prediction for the fight, bud?
Floyd by late stoppage.
Awesome.
He's gonna be his ass until Conor's gonna. I mean, Conor has given up before.
Do you think there might be a bit of a heart problem, mate?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Awesome.
I didn't
Austin,
realize
we're going to be seeing.
I thought he only had one loss.
Yeah, he's got 3, does he? What is it?
3
he's had
losses.
a few, hasn't he? 3 losses, doesn't he? I think early on in his career he got tapped out, I think.
There you go.
Next up is Jake Shields. Jake, an absolute veteran of the MMA, and he's still currently fighting in the welterweight division for the World Series of Fighting. He's probably best known for that UFC title fight against the greatest ever in George St. Pierre. He was the last Rumble on the Rock welterweight champion, the only elite XC welterweight champion, and former Shudo welterweight champion and Strikeforce champion. He's still competing. He's still active. It's going to be interesting to hear his perspective because he was in the corner of Nate Diaz in both fights against Conor McGregor. So it'll be interesting to get his take. I know he does a lot of sparring and training with some boxing guys. So it's going to be an interesting analysis. So here's Jake Shields.
I watched some highlights of it. I didn't watch the whole press conferences, but I watched some highlights of the press conferences.
Yeah, what have you made out so far?
I mean, it's pretty funny. They're doing a good job of selling the fight. Got to give them that. I mean, it's been entertaining.
For sure, man. Let's just touch on Conor McGregor. You know, I know obviously you're good mates with Nate, so you've had a lot of time actually watching Conor fight. Realistically, switching over into another sport, are you giving him much of a chance against Floyd?
I mean, it's definitely a long shot. I mean, Floyd's one of the greatest boxers of all time. The guy is, a lot of people don't like him, underestimate him, but he's a phenomenal technician, and it's going to be a tough fight for Conor.
Yeah, and in terms of, Floyd's age now, he's 40 years old, and he's been inactive for a couple of years. Do you think that's going to be much of an issue for Floyd at all?
That's a good question. That's one of Conor's best chances if Floyd slowed down a little bit. And it's hard to say. I think Floyd is a guy who's continually working out and training every day, but sometimes age can start catching up with you. I think he's around 40 right now, so it's possible. We'll see.
Yeah, you were in the corner for Nate for the last couple of fights that he had with Conor. In terms of Nate's observations of Conor from that fight, what did he say in terms of punching power, speed, and things like that? Was there any observations?
I mean, we didn't really get into any details, but I mean, obviously, Conor was fast and hit hard, but it's just, I think Nate felt like it was nothing special, nothing he hadn't seen. He's boxed a lot of the best guys. He went out there, and the first fight he went, broke him mentally and started beating him up, and the second fight was could have gone either way.
Yeah, and how quickly did you guys notice that Conor was gassing?
I think about halfway through the second round, you started seeing he hit him everything he got, and then Nate was still coming forward. So you could see the look of frustration on his face, and then that's when you see him starting to looking like he might quit.
Yeah, Jake, for yourself, you've been in 4-ounce gloves, and I'm sure that you do plenty of training in 10-ounce gloves. What's the major difference in power and speed from yourself?
I mean, the 4-ounce gloves definitely hit harder. I mean, I haven't sparred that much 10-ounce gloves, to be honest, because usually when we're sparring 16s or at least 12s, so I haven't really done too much work in 10s other than bag work. But they're definitely a lot more padded than the 4s.
What about going from 5 times 5-minute rounds to boxing 3 times 12? I was just speaking to Chris Algieri, and he made a big change from being a kickboxer to being a boxer later in his career, and he was just saying the biggest adjustment for him was in boxing the pace of the actual fight, because to throw a kick can take 2 or 3 seconds. To throw a punch can literally be done in 0.1 of a second. So he was talking about the pace. Do you think the extra rounds and the pace is going to be a major issue?
I think the 3-minute rounds are a lot easier than 5-minute rounds. But just the pacing can be different. It's overall, I think it's more energy MMA. Throwing the kicks, the takedowns, the MMA is the hardest one, but it could be different. If Floyd's able to push the pace, he could still turn up the pace on him. Yeah.
Have you done much boxing sparring at all with any professional boxers, Jake?
Yeah, I've done a good amount, but never like world champions or anyone like Floyd's level. I've fought a lot of pros, but obviously pros.
Yeah, and what was kind of your own observations or your own struggles in that?
To me, I mean, you usually don't get as tired unless the guys just really keep pushing forward and going. And it's just, there's different types of styles, different problems you run into. I think a guy like Floyd is just so hard. He's going to be so hard to hit and frustrate you. He's probably not a guy that's going to push the pace and break you, but he's the kind of guy that'll frustrate you by not being able to hit him.
Yeah. Do you think Conor can realistically win a round, Jay?
I mean, he definitely could. I mean, a good chance he won't, but yeah, he definitely could. I mean, anything could happen. He could go out there and pull a big upset. He's got that straight left down the middle. He's got a lot of power. He's got speed. It's I'm definitely picking Floyd, but anything can happen in these fights.
Yeah. Do you think if Conor actually does pull off an upset that Floyd's legacy's ruined?
Not ruined. He went 49-0, and the fact that he's 40, he's had a phenomenal career. It'll be an embarrassment for sure, but I wouldn't say his legacy's ruined.
Yeah. And your prediction for the fight there, Jay?
I'd go with Floyd either by decision or a late round TKO.
Next up, we've got one of the good guys of Australian boxing. He's a Hall of Fame boxing trainer in Johnny Lewis. He's been around the game for so long. He's trained 6 world champions, including the great Jeff Fenech, Costa Tszyu, and Jeff Harding. So, in terms of getting a trainer's perspective, I think it's going to be very valuable, and it's going to be very interesting to see what Johnny has to say about the fight. So here it is.
The only thing is that, mate, I see where they were trying to get it to happen. I've got to say that I didn't think it would, but it is. Whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing, I won't be able to say until it's all over, if it's been a complete circus or whether there was some merit in it or whatever, mate. So yeah. I'm aware of it happening, but
I think the biggest thing I want to get out from today, because obviously you've been around boxing circles for such a long time, and you were in Costa Tszyu's circle for such a long time as well, that I'm sure that at some stage, you guys came across Floyd Mayweather, and yourself being the boxing person that you are, you would have watched a lot of his fights and a lot of his style. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit in terms of, I'm sure that you would have thought about it at one stage. It's, if you were to fight someone like Floyd Mayweather, what sort of tactics do you think would be any way effective against a guy of his ability?
Look, first and foremost, one of the highest skilled fighters of the last couple of decades, without doubt. To match him in skill, well, I think it'd come second. But with a bloke like Costa, you'd want to sort of, I believe, jump on him and try and break him up and sap his confidence. Now, that would be a very hard thing to do because he's a very confident person and, as I said, extremely skillful. But I do think you'd have to sort of like try and bank on putting some good ones together and try and stop him, because I think it'd be very hard to beat him on points.
Floyd's 40 now, Johnny. You've seen yourself. You've had some brilliant fighters, Costa and, Jeff Fenech and Harding, but they all got older, and as we all get older, we start losing our skills a little bit. At 40, is Floyd vulnerable at this stage?
Look, I suppose when you get asked these questions, you'd like to have done a little bit of homework. Just sitting here talking to you, I find that what I'd be looking at is I looked at the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight when it finally came together, which was most probably a good 5 years too late, and we were left with 2 old men then. I was hoping that it'd be a good shot in the arm for boxing, but I've got to say that I was left very disappointed in the fight. and very disappointed in both Pacquiao and Mayweather. We then go and we look at Pacquiao. The other night, he's 38 or 39, and he fought a young bloke, and we're putting all the razzmatazz who won it. And that, I honestly believe that the young Australian Horn won the fight, and I think that if you look at it, and I don't want to say this to take anything away from young Jeff Horn, but Pacquiao was about 70% max of what he was, and but that comes with the old age, which brings us to the question with Mayweather. He's been out of it a bit. Look, he's, as I said, very, very skillful, but mate, does his speed deteriorate with inactivity? You've got to, with all that being said and done, I don't think that Mayweather, I think that fight with Pacquiao showed that he was past his prime. A lot of people say, he did what he had to do. Well, that was right. That's what he had to do. That's what I feel that he'll do with McGregor. He'll do what he has to do. Like, I don't know whether he'll want to get out of the comfort zone and take a risk and try and knock him out, or whether he'll just sit back with beautiful defence and skills and just pop him here and there.
Have you had a chance to watch much of a Conor McGregor before, Johnny?
I look, I'm not a fan of it, but I have seen him, and I thought that, with it all, he's got something. Like, he's, without certainly knowing anything about the sport, I think there was something about him that you'd say, gee, this little tiger, he'd take some beating on the road or something like that. Like, if the fight was going to be in a telephone box, well, I'd put my house on McGregor, but it's going to be in the middle of the Sydney Cricket Ground. Such will be the size of the ring for Mayweather. That's why I think that Floyd, it's boxing and boxing only, so I'd be very, very surprised if Floyd didn't handle him very, very easily. But as I say, how much has he declined by inactivity? And you've got to understand that one of the biggest things, the biggest asset in boxing is the hunger. And if you look at that, Jeff Horn, he had hunger and he wanted that fight. And I think that's why he won the fight. You can't maintain that. You can't maintain that. That hunger levels, like when you suddenly got millions
of dollars.
Well, it's
different, isn't it? You got all the money now, and it's not like when you were coming up when you were eating scraps.
I'm sorry, I just missed that last bit.
I just said, well, the hunger's just not there. It's not the same when you were just coming through the ranks and you're eating the cheap meat.
The one thing is that in the fight game is the hungriest bloke usually comes out on top, and it's more so now with Floyd, even though I'm sure that McGregor's got plenty too, but I mean to say he's going to be the hungriest. I somehow think that McGregor will be hungry, but I can't see that offsetting. Like, it's a different sport. It's like it's like a rugby league player gonna play for Sydney FC, and try and play soccer. But look, it's all there for Floyd. Everything's in his favour as far as the fight's concerned, like a fist fight. But as I said, the other little bugger, he'd certainly, like if the kicking and all that was in, well, you'd put your house on him. But it's not going to be that way, is it?
That's Floyd, not at all, mate.
Like Floyd knew, he waited till he knew Manny was there for completely to be taken, and Manny went before Floyd, so to speak, and plus he had a crook shoulder, or suppose had a crook shoulder or whatever, you know.
Next up is Jacob Stitch Duran. In terms of everyone here, I don't think anyone's watched as much live boxing and MMA as Stitch. You think Stitch, in those two sports, he's pretty much the most highest profile cut man. He's a movie star, but he's worked the corner of the likes of the Klitschko brothers, Andre Ward, Amir Khan, Chris Algieri, Machida, Forrest Griffith, Cain Velasquez, all the big UFC fighters. He's done them all. So I don't think you would, like I said, you're not going to find a person who has seen more live events and can offer such valuable insights. He's also a Las Vegas native, and I know he hangs around the Mayweather Boxing Club a lot. So it's going to be very interesting to get the perspective of Jacob Stitch Duran.
No, I didn't. I don't get too much into that. It all becomes crazy. But I did see, when Conor was kind of bashing Floyd's father a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's gonna be a show, that's for sure.
Yeah. Is this something that you're really interested in?
Man, everywhere I go, people are asking me that, same question, and people are asking me if I'm going to be working the fight, and I get people that aren't even boxing or MMA people. Everybody is talking about it. Yeah, of course, there's going to be some interest in it, but I've been through them before a lot of times with the Tyson fights, and all these guys where the hype is real big, and after a while, you just kind of put it on cruise control, and all that at this point is all bullshit talk anyway.
Yeah. Do you think, just having a look at the fight now, you've been in the game for a long time, and we've worked on both sides. That's why I think that you'll actually be quite good to actually give some analysis on this actual fight. Just, obviously it's working in Floyd's favor. It's in boxing. But when you look at Conor, do you think he realistically has a shot at winning, one? And two, even if he doesn't, does he have a chance of being competitive and actually winning rounds?
Yeah, and to number one, yeah, absolutely. And I've said that in interviews that, I personally think, the first 2 rounds are dangerous for Floyd. And because, of the style of fighting that McGregor brings to the table. And, he's used to that grappling close-in fighting, right? And, so I think that's an advantage. He's going to have to literally just back him up against the ropes. And if I was going to coach him, I'd go from the body up to the top of the head. So, but, he's bigger than Floyd, so and he hits hard, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the possibility he could definitely do it. As the fight progresses, then obviously the strong favor is on Mayweather's side.
Yeah, you spoke about the punching power, and obviously you see a lot, especially this weekend. You're going to be working both boxing and MMA. In terms of those gloves, Stitch, 4 ounces to 10 ounces. Do you think Conor's power will be neutralized at all?
I don't think so. Guys get knocked out with 10-ounce gloves all the time. And he has the power to still, and he's training with those anyway. He's training with 16s, and I'm sure he's sparring. He's sparring with 16s, but once you get into the 10s, then it's going to be a horse of a different color. But I don't think that's going to affect him at all.
Yeah. What about Floyd now at 41, 42 years age? I know you work with a lot of guys in the latter stages of their career. In terms of like what you've noticed.
Yeah, and the reason I just give me 15 minutes, I just got back from Mayweather's gym.
Yeah.
I go hang out there and kind of shoot the shit all the time, and everybody's talking about it. And but my personal gut feeling is, as well as an athlete as Floyd is, and the way he's really been preserving his body, that just like Muhammad Ali, these 2 years off for Floyd, I think they're not gonna affect him at all. And the thing that Floyd has that he brings to the table is just natural ability, man. And, when you see Floyd train, he's just a horse of a different color.
Yeah. What about for Conor, going from 5 times 5 minute rounds to boxing now 3 times 12? Do you think that's a major factor?
And you brought that up, and that's the first time I've heard anybody ask that question, but I think that works out to Conor's favor in giving him more rounds. So I think I think as one of his big factors has always been is kind of gassing out at the end, and I think if he goes in 3 minute runs, and then it's not as high endurance in boxing as it is in MMA, because they're using everything. So I think that's that's a good sign for Conor.
Yeah. In your time, have you seen much sparring? You just spoke about, hanging out at the Mayweather gym and things like that. Have you seen much sparring at all between professional boxers and professional MMA fighters?
Nah, Mayweather normally has, pure boxers. And I know, King Mo was there, and Roy Nelson were there yesterday, but they do their own thing. So they seldomly do I see one of these guys get together with another, and so yeah, I couldn't answer that question to give you, I've seen this guy and I've seen that guy because I haven't.
Yeah. Do you think Floyd will bring like a few MMA guys in just to maybe that awkwardness and things like that?
That's another fucking question. Good question, man. It's. In my knowledge that you asked that, nobody's asked that either.
Yeah, nice.
Good question, Tristan, by the way, my man.
Thanks, brother.
But just like Floyd has his own style, and it's going to be tough to emulate that. I think somebody said they're bringing in Paulie Malignaggi, But the thing about it is Floyd's style is Floyd's style. And the same token now is McGregor's style is McGregor's style. I don't think McGregor is going to have that boxing stance with his hands up and all that. I think, he's going to, how he always swings his arms around but, the thing that he has is, and that I like, and I'm talking about McGregor, is that he knows how to close that gap real quick because he's done it many, many, many times. And that's going to be to his advantage.
Yeah.
So it's, people, obviously Floyd is, is the one that's highly publicized as just being the dominant factor. But, knowing Conor McGregor and, knowing the Irish blood in him and, the heart that he has and the balls that he has and, the power that he has, he's, don't underestimate him.
Yeah.
That's the thing about him. You can't do that. And if Conor comes and, let's say he kind of shakes and bakes and acts like he's going down and maybe he's going to throw a kick or, and you throw Floyd off, then that's to his advantage.
What about if Conor actually wins? Do you think Floyd's legacy is ruined?
No, I don't think so. That's damn, man, you're pretty good, Tristan.
Thanks,
let me think about this one because I think overall, he'll always, like Bernard Hopkins is always going to be known as the guy that got knocked out by Joe Smith, and nobody knew who Joe Smith was, right? And but I think Floyd, his legacy, number one, if he beats Conor McGregor, that 50-0, that 50 will have an asterisk anyway, because he fought an MMA guy. But if he loses, the only way he's going to lose to Conor would be for him to get knocked out, and then that way. I don't think, he'll lose his credibility, but I think on the flip side, I think Conor's legacy would just kind of be, sealed in stone, man, big time.
Yeah, okay, let's put it all on the line, Stitch. What's your prediction for the fight, my man?
And that's the thing I don't do, man. Tristan, I wish I could say, this guy and that guy, but, one of the things I never like to do is give predictions because for the most part, we're all armchair quarterbacks and I don't bet because I ain't good at betting, and I ain't good at predictions because if I said McGregor, then fucking Floyd would win, and I said Floyd, then McGregor would win. But I think definitely the hype is going to be bigger than the fight. Yeah. I think the fight is going to start off, with a lot of enthusiasm, and as the rounds progress, and you might just see the. I don't know. I don't know. That's a tough one, but. Who's going to win it? Man, I tell you what, I don't know. Yeah. If I had $100 to bet, and when I moved to Vegas, I said I'd never bet, but I put $100 on McGregor.
Nice. Next on the show, we've got Tony Jeffries. Tony's profile is really growing. He's got that fantastic gym in LA, Box and Burn. He's been on that Big Brown Breakdown with Brendan Schaub. He's kind of boxing analyst now. He was head coach for Brendan in his last 3 fights in the UFC. So they've got a great relationship there. Tony, not to be outdone, he's a great professional boxer as well. He was undefeated in 10 professional bouts. Unfortunately, injury costing him his career. Great amateur as well. He won a bronze medal at the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. So it's going to be great to get his perspective, a little bit different. He's actually from England, so it's good to get a little bit of a variety from both England, Australia, and America. So I introduce Tony Jeffries.
Yeah, I agree. The first two press conferences were great. Conor made me laugh out loud. Then the third one was a bit and then there was one to deal with in London, which was another good one by Conor. Conor did well on that one. He was funny, made me laugh out loud. Mayweather was boring. But yeah, I mean, I love the full event. A lot of boxers are hating on it a lot.
Yeah.
But you know, it's entertainment. It's a once in a lifetime event. So why not happen in our lifetime? If it's a crap fight, so what? You know, I think everyone's going to watch it. I think it's a win-win for boxing, because that's the thing with boxers. They're like, oh, it's killing the sport, but it's not. It's a win-win. If Mayweather knocks him out in 4 rounds, now we've just proved that boxing is way better than MMA. If Mayweather knocks him out, which I don't think is going to happen, but if Mayweather knocks him out, it's great for boxing, because now we've got a new superstar of boxing. Yeah. So I think this is a win for boxing.
Do you think people are underestimating Conor's ability, especially, you know, there's been a lot of talk about will Conor win a round? Like, what's your opinion on that?
No, I don't think people's underestimating Conor. I think what people are saying is right. I can't see Conor winning a round. I can't see how he can win a round. He's fighting the greatest fighter of all time, although now he's a little bit older, but he still does this shit in his sleep for Mayweather. And I am a massive Conor fan. I would love to see Conor knock him out. But realistically, from the outside looking in, when you look at it, I think it's a easy fight for Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, I've been talking to a few between boxers, UFCs, and a few kickboxers as well, and they thought that Conor would probably, you know, have his best chance early on because of his awkward style. Floyd might not want to take too many chances early on. But then some of the other sort of, like I spoke to Austin Trout yesterday, and he lives in Albuquerque, so he spars with a lot of guys that work out at Jackson's MMA gym. And what he was saying was that when he spars MMA guys, is that when he hits them in the head, they give it away. Like, they take a punch a lot differently to a boxer. You know how when you take a punch, you just get straight back into it? They take a second to actually shake things off, so he knows that he's kind of hurt them a little bit.
Right, yeah.
Have you noticed any? Because obviously when you trained Brendan, did he do much kind of sparring against any of the boxers?
He did. He sparred a little bit against boxers, but it's like it's 2 different sports. Like, so I know that now Conor is going to be doing a lot of boxing work, but he just hasn't got time to become a real boxer is. And like you said, I've seen MMA fighters get punched, not so much Brendan, but like in with boxers. And boxers, I've never seen an MMA fighter get the better of a boxer in a sparring session, like ever really. If it's a high level MMA fighter versus a high level boxer, it's not.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen.
Another feedback that I was getting from the guys is that the number one way they think they kind of might struggle is 1, the pace of an actual boxing fight compared to an MMA fight, and 2, Conor having to deal with the fact of getting hit so many times in the head, when in the MMA fight, at the moment, any time he's lost, he's been tapped out. So he might not be used to actually getting hit so many times over and over in the head. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I agree with that, because you're not used to getting jabbed in the head for like 15 times in 1 round. It doesn't happen now, man. And another thing is, which I'm going to give my prediction of the fight now, is I think Mayweather's going to stop Conor with body shots. I think he's going to be inside, because Conor's not used to getting hit to the body like this, and obviously Mayweather can fight inside way better than Conor in a boxing match. I think Conor's going to get inside, hold on, in about 3 or 4 rounds, and Mayweather's going to hit him with like a left hook to the body, and I think that's going to end the fight.
Yeah. What about, you know, we saw a couple of weeks ago, I know you watched the fight with Horn and Pacquiao. You know, it did look like Pacquiao got really old in a fight. Do you think maybe Floyd's age and inactivity will be a factor at all?
I think that definitely gives Mayweather the advantage, because with boxing, I think the first thing that goes from a boxer is your reactions. And we kind of seen that with the Pacquiao. You know, I think it was the reactions that kind of went right on with the fight. So maybe you never know until you're in there, and I think Floyd will not know until he's in there. But at the same time, I think like Floyd's going to be preparing for this fight, because it kind of is his legacy will be out the window if he loses this fight. So think he'd be preparing for this fight like he was preparing for the Pacquiao fight or anyone else.
Yeah. Tony, do you reckon the gloves are going to make much of a difference? Connor's used to those 4-ounce MMA gloves. In terms of keeping your speed and power, do you think that's possible with 10-ounce gloves?
Well, I think with Conor, even though all MMA fighters, they do, they're always trained in 10-ounce gloves, so I think they're used to that. Maybe now he trains in 60-ounce gloves, he's fighting in 10s. I don't think that's going to be a big deal, really. And as well, I know that what they've said in the press conference that I'm not going to be wearing the Mexican-style gloves. I was going to say some of the Mexican-style 10-ounce gloves, there's not much more padding in them than there is in the UFC gloves. But they've got to wear bigger gloves. So, yeah, I think it's everyone talks about Conor's power, which he is powerful, but I just don't think he's as powerful as Manny Pacquiao or as Maidana or as Sugar Shane Mosley or Miguel Cotto or Canelo Alvarez. Conor McGregor's not as big a puncher as all of them guys, so that's another reason why I think it's going in Mayweather's favour.
Yeah, obviously we spoke about in the last podcast you coming up, and you're a bit of a superstar. You won a bronze medal, and you had a lot of attention when you were coming through the programs as well. In terms of when you were training, when your trainers used to offer you guys to spar with, when you had awkward guys, was it a situation where you sometimes would fight down to their level, or just didn't like being in there with them at all?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I can tell you know your boxing by asking these questions. But yeah, I mean, sometimes, very rarely, if you were sparring with someone over and over in like a few weeks, you might start to drop down their level. But if you've been used to being in the ring with high-level guys, and you're going with someone who's a lower level, you're not drop down their level straight away. I think you're going to fight even better, and obviously Conor's going to be a little bit awkward and with his distance and stuff like that, but I really don't think it's anything Mayweather hasn't seen. I know it's a different style, but I think once you're in there, you've both got two arms, you've both got a head, a torso, footwork. I think Mayweather's just going to figure him out within 1 round, 2 rounds, and then he's going to come on top and beat the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Which I wish I was wrong, because I would love to see Conor just knock him straight out. So I'm not a fan of Mayweather at all, but I don't see it happening.
Tony, that video that came out of Conor sparring, that was a boxing burn, right?
Yeah, that was at my gym's. Yeah.
Were you there that day?
Yeah, I was there. I was actually on the video as well, and that video went viral, which is great for the
boxing burn. It's awesome.
Yeah, great for boxing burn.
What was your...
I actually released that video.
Yeah, I know, and then they made you take it down, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because Conor's manager told me to release it, so I released it. They told me to take it down, but it was too late because everyone stole it. Yeah. But I mean, it was a gun competitive sport. Conor's manager texted me saying I'm looking for someone for Conor to move around with. It was just so happened that Chris Van Heiden was around in the gym, so that was it really. And they've done a few sparring sessions, and I'm very surprised that they let everyone videos.
Yeah. What was your observations? Because obviously the ones that we've seen, you've seen the full version. We've seen kind of edited clips. We've seen one side of the versions where it just looks like Conor's getting his ass beat, and the other side he looks pretty good. What actually happened in that session? And
the sport was a good competitive sport. If I never knew who Conor was and I just come in, I would have thought he was a very well-rounded professional boxer. But obviously I knew who Conor was. I was impressed with how elusive he was and how fast he was. But then he was in against Chris Van Heiden, who was a seasoned professional, a come-forward fighter. Yeah. It was a good competitive sport. Chris got the better of most of the rounds. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how hard they were both going. They weren't trying to hurt each other. They were in there moving around.
Next up on the podcast will be Paul Upham. Paul's one of my favourite boxing analysts here in Australia. He's had a remarkable boxing analyst career. He's a regular on Fox Sports News here in Australia. Big thing he was content editor for secondsout.com from 2000 to 2010. He's also authored 3 boxing books as well. He has a great analysis. If you do follow him on Twitter, if you're not yet, I urge you to, because he's a a good guy of Australian boxing and also world boxing. He can see the fights very, very well, and he scores the fights very, very well as well. All his analysis is first class, and it isn't favourable in any direction. He puts all the points on the board, and I think you'll really enjoy this analysis with Paul Upham.
Look, boxing people do not give him any chance whatsoever, but the simple fact is that it's still a competitive boxing match, and I always say you can make any prediction you want before the fight, but the reason we actually get the guys into the ring is so we can actually see them fight. And all it takes is one punch from Conor McGregor to knock Mayweather out. Albeit, no one's ever done that. And there's a reason for that, because Mayweather is so good. He's not the greatest fighter of all time, but he's one of the greatest defensive fighters of all time. And if you look at the facts that he's faced so many good guys, yeah, there's a couple of guys he probably didn't fight going along the way. Costa Zoo, maybe one of them, didn't work out at the time. But, you can't say that he hasn't beaten the best of the best. And the reason that he hasn't been beaten is because he's that good. And that's the evidence. The positive for McGregor is that, Mayweather hasn't fought for 2 years. He's been out of the ring. He's 40 years of age. McGregor looks bigger than him. He looks stronger than Mayweather. They are fighting at 154 pounds. Which is probably one weight class above Mayweather's best. There's so many reasons why Mayweather wins this fight easily. Either boringly on points over 12 rounds, or I'm sort of more suspicious that Mayweather may actually stop him late, because I think the key point negative for McGregor is how is he going to handle the pace and fighting 12 3-minute rounds, because they don't do that in MMA. I got so much respect for MMA. I'm a boxing guy, and boxing's my sport, and, I'm not really into MMA. I respect them as athletes, but it's so much different. They don't fight as long. There's more grappling. There's so many more physical demands, when it comes to maneuvers in MMA. But, boxing is still a tough sport. To go 12 rounds, 3-minute 12-minute rounds, it's such a physical demand, and Mayweather has always been fitter than his opponents. And he's 40. He's not going to be in the best condition. He admitted today in the press conference in Toronto. He said, I'm not what I was, but I'm still good enough to beat him. And under the rules of boxing, it's hard to see a scenario where Mayweather doesn't win, except if there's one knockout punch. And I went and saw Shane Mosley against Shannon Taylor in Las Vegas, and I saw Shane train close up before the fight. And I walked away from that training session thinking, I can't see this guy ever losing. I remember Roy Jones Jr. his peak, and thinking, I can never see this guy losing. But everyone gets old, and through my research in boxing history, 35 is the cutoff. Only truly great fighters do great physical things over the age of 35. And Mayweather's 40.
Yeah. Were you surprised, we're all huge boxing fans. You just mentioned Roy Jones. He came out here when he fought Danny Green. Obviously, Danny is a professional boxer. He was a world champion, so we can't really compare it to what Conor McGregor is. But realistically, Roy Jones at the time, he was still one of the best boxers around, and he got pumped in one round. Like, if there's ever going to be a stoppage, do you think it will be early for Conor, that I mean?
You would think that Conor McGregor's best tactics would be to attack early, rough Mayweather up, if not break the rules, go close to bending them, depending on what the referee allows, and really work Mayweather over, because I just can't see McGregor after 6 rounds having the gas to knock Mayweather out at that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could land one punch, but and he said today, in his Toronto press conference, he promised to knock Mayweather out in under 4 rounds. And I think that's a recognition that is his advantage. And Mayweather knows that. And in boxing, you only have to win 7 of the 12 rounds to win the fight, as we saw with Jeff Horn against Manny Pacquiao. You don't have to win all 12 rounds. And I suspect that Mayweather will be his defensive best in those first 4 to 5 rounds. And if he doesn't pick up 1 or 2 rounds, well then, he could swing towards the end of the fight, because I don't care how much training McGregor's done in the lead up to this fight. He simply hasn't had enough time to convert to a 12-round boxer. So I think he realises that he has to win early and knock Mayweather out early. He's promising to do that. And, I've seen in MMA, I've seen his highlights. He's knocked guys out and knocked them down. He seems to be quite often off balance and throwing from unusual stances, and maybe that's his advantage, because Mayweather doesn't really know what he's going to do. And I think that unpredictability is one thing that McGregor can use against Mayweather. But as we've seen before, first 2 or 3 rounds, Mayweather will just soak it all up, be defensive, give the shoulder rolls, use the gloves, use his arms, take what he's got, feel him out, and then he'll open him up. And Mayweather is actually a pretty good puncher. He's never been a one-punch knockout artist. He's more accumulation guy. But I get the feeling that if he hurts McGregor later on, McGregor's out of gas. Mayweather could stop him on a TKO.
Yeah. Paul, in all your time covering the sport and attending things like training sessions and things like that, have you ever seen boxers and MMA professional fighters sparring at all?
Lots of guys have come over. I remember years ago, John Parr, who's, a fantastic...
Yeah, I spoke to him yesterday.
International, world champion when it comes to Muay Thai boxing, one of the greats, fought all around the world, And he tried boxing for a while, and he was semi-competitive and semi-successful, but he decided that it wasn't his thing and he was better off. And, these guys have a combat, base. So they do have some skills when it comes to being in combat. Whether they can convert over to be great boxers, there really hasn't been a lot of guys. I know there's been some guys out of Asia who were, kickboxers or Muay Thai fighters and converted to be, sort of successful boxers, but it's a different discipline. I'm actually interested in the heat of battle. Is Conor McGregor accidentally going to throw an elbow or accidentally going to throw a kick? Because he's been doing that for so
memory,
long.
Right? So
exactly, and particularly, whether it's an accident or whether Mayweather frustrates him and McGregor loses his temper, and McGregor gets disqualified. I could see that happening, because I think whoever the referee is in Las Vegas out of Nevada, they'll be very cautious of McGregor, not doing anything illegal when it comes to the rules of boxing. But in the heat of battle, it makes me wonder whether he might accidentally do something, not intentionally, but just out of, throwing those combinations in MMA for so long. Whether you can restrict yourself, only someone like who's been in that sort of sport changing over to boxing could actually tell you how hard it is not to throw the wrong punch or not to throw the kick.
Yeah.
So, so many people say to me, I'm not going to watch this fight because, Mayweather's going to win easy. It's a joke fight. It's still a physical competition. And I'll say this.
Everyone's going to watch it.
Well, there's a lot of people who have not. A lot of people have told me they're not going to watch it. They're put off by the price. They think it's, Mayweather, it's all set up for Mayweather to win. But I'll tell people, I've been saying this to people, that if McGregor wins, it would have to be one of the all-time greatest upsets in boxing history. A lot of people point to when Buster Douglas beat Mike Tyson. Buster Douglas, as a professional fighter, had a lot of fights, a lot of experience. Conor McGregor's in his first boxing match against the former pound-for-pound best in the world. If McGregor wins, no matter what the circumstances are, it's one of the all-time monster upsets in boxing.
Oh, big time. Paul, do you think if that upset does happen, what do you think about Floyd's legacy?
It would depend on how he lost. If he loses by just a one-punch knockout, that could happen to anybody at any time, and we've seen it before, I don't think he's going to be penalised, because boxing historians will recognise what he achieved throughout his career, through multiple weight classes against multiple elite fighters. His plan is to be 50-0. And the other thing that's nagging me is that there's been very rarely in boxing where boxers have been so well managed and so well promoted in their careers that everything goes perfectly. It doesn't happen. My understanding of Rocky Marciano, which we always talk about the 49-0 record, was he probably wanted to continue, but there wasn't an appropriate fight out there for him. So he sort of said, well, I might as well retire. And he retired at 49-0. The number really didn't mean anything for him. And he finished his career. Floyd Mayweather, he signed his last Showtime contract, the 6-fight contract, which brought him to 49-0. And I remember saying to a couple of associates in boxing at the time that I thought that was designed that so he could auction off his 50th fight to the highest bidder, and he wouldn't be locked in. And it's turned out that way. Mayweather's planned his career so well. So going back to your question, is he going to be penalised? I think people would some people would think less of him, being beaten by Conor McGregor, an absolute novice when it comes to boxing. But I think it depends about the circumstances. I can't see a scenario where McGregor outboxes him for 12 rounds. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
He would have to seriously hurt him and knock him out. And then but people would then qualify the loss by saying, well, he was 40 years of age. He hadn't fought for 2 years. And as I said to you, the history points, 35 years of age is the cutoff. And people talk about, George Foreman won the heavyweight title when he was in his 40s, but what people forget was he lost every single round to Michael Moorer until he knocked him out.
True.
He wasn't even in that fight. It wasn't even close. It was a one-punch knockout. So for Conor McGregor, to me, I think he has to win by a knockout by one punch. But I think most people will recognise, what Mayweather's already achieved regardless of this fight.
Yeah. Paul, final question. I'm going to put you on the line, mate. Give me a prediction for the fight, man.
Well, look, I can't see any evidence to say that Mayweather's not going to win, except for the fact, as I've already said to you, a one-punch knockout can happen to anybody. We've seen it to Roy Jones Jr. We've seen, Sugar Shane Mosley got really badly hurt against Vernon Forrest in their first fight, and you couldn't imagine these things happening. So, yeah, McGregor's got a chance to win. It's a battle of combat in there, anything possible, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Mayweather win easily on points in a boring fight again. But I don't think McGregor's going to go like that. I think he's going to throw everything at him. It's not going to be like Pacquiao and Mayweather. I sort of suspect that McGregor's going to go all out in those first 5 rounds trying to knock Mayweather out. And then there's a scenario where Mayweather can just wear him down and stop him when he's gassed. So I'm going to say Mayweather by later round TKO. But as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Mayweather just wins very easily on points and it goes the distance.
Next up on the show, we've got probably the baddest man in the world. We've got Tim Kennedy. If you don't know who Tim is, please Google him because he's a retired UFC fighter who fought at a very high level, was always a contender in that UFC middleweight division. He had a record of 18-6. He's actually beaten the champion, Michael Bisping, and also former welterweight champion, Robbie Lawler. Away from the actual sport, he's a sergeant first class with the 7th Forces group with the US Army. So he's an incredible guy, and I'm sure he's going to bring an incredible perspective. So here is Tim Kennedy.
It was different. It was cool to see something unique. It wasn't a UFC press conference, and it wasn't a boxing press conference. It was something unique. It's something else entirely. It's something perhaps original. I'm not sure I'm sold on the format because it's different. I'm not sure if it's best promoting these two guys. And, that at a $90-something a ticket price to watch it on pay-per-view, they got a fight to sell. And not only do they need to sell out a Coliseum, but they need to sell, they got to get paid.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
What is that going to look like? And I don't know if, it was only the first one. It's the first time that they've ever met. It's the first time they've ever looked into each other's eyes. And I thought both of them did exactly what I expected them to. Floyd, wearing a tracksuit, taking verbal licks sometimes and then giving them sometimes and not cowering at any point. And then Conor was Conor. He doing funny things an Irishman does. He didn't get tricked into some race baiting by Mayweather, which was, I thought, a little classless. He responded as a proud Irishman and looking at their size. This is not an easy fight for Mayweather. I know everybody's like, oh, this is a different world, and it was a mistake for Mayweather to run his mouth, be like, oh, we can go in the octagon. No, if you're going to go into an octagon, you would have gone into an octagon. But you get destroyed by every single person within 20 pounds of you that fights in the UFC. So let's not even, that's a realm of ridiculousness that I can't even believe he would venture to walk down. And, of course, Conor just made fun of him, humiliated him at that point. And Conor did great with, you can't even pay your bills right now. You can't even pay the IRS. That's funny. And so it was, from Conor's suit to, when they're squaring off. Statistically, Mayweather has had a hard time with southpaws, and he has a hard time with bigger guys that are more rangy. He wants that slugger to come in, and he can use his footwork and his skill and his ability to evade strikes and beat him in rounds. This is going to be harder. If Conor has height, he has reach, he has size, he's a southpaw. That left hand is accurate. I don't know. I'd go to say that he's going to knock him out in 4 rounds, like he said, but it is much more dangerous than I think a lot of people are considering.
Yeah, I think people are underestimating his ability a little bit. Obviously you might be in that camp that thinks that, even if Conor was to lose, do you think he's going to take a few rounds?
Yeah. I would assume that Conor could take a few rounds in, early, when they're figuring out range, and Conor is a very difficult person to understand his range. He does weird, unorthodox things with footwork, and that left hand finds a way to land. A couple of big shots does a little bit of damage and dictates range for the majority of a round, and he just stole a round. And we're saying steal a round, but those are very likely things to occur. And if that happens for the majority of time in a round, that's a round for Conor.
What tactics do you think will be effective against Floyd?
A constant jab, never letting him settle, never exploding in. If he can, you're not going to confuse the complexity and sophistication of a boxer like Mayweather. Let's not joke ourselves. Conor is never going to be that technical of a boxer to be able to mix up Floyd. But if he can control range for periods of time to set up that left hand, that's dangerous. That left hand has put out some really good guys. And I think if I were Conor, that's what I would be doing. I'd be setting range and then collapsing range using my jab, and then to set up my left hand.
Yeah. Tim, at the back end of your career, you were a little bit more inactive than you were at the front end of your career. With Floyd not being in the ring for 2 years, and also he's not ever really been much of an active fighter anyway, do you think age might catch up with him in this fight?
Yeah. That was my very last fight. I felt age. I was 37. I had essentially 2.5 fight camps. Originally gonna fight Rashad, and then having to change an opponent to a different event, and then change an opponent again to another event. Those things on a younger fighter, on a 25-year-old, that's a drop in the bucket. That's a drop in youth. To a 40-year-old, where you haven't fought in 2 years, and now you're doing a long fight camp with a whole bunch of travel, that can take its toll. And Conor's in his prime. Floyd is waning. He's been waning for a few years, and this is a perfect time for Conor to shine.
What about the gloves, Tim? You guys in MMA, you wear your 4 ounces. In boxing, they want 10-ounce gloves in these ones, and they're not allowed to wear raised gloves, the Mexican smaller type of gloves as well. In terms of your own experience and punching between the two of them, do you think Conor will lose much punching power going up in size?
No. The glove size does very little to cushion a punch. It just reduces your chance of cut. And, if you think in the week of us training as mixed martial artists, 2 of our, let's say you do striking 4 times a week, and you grapple 4 times a week, and then you do strength and conditioning 4 times a week, then you do some active recovery, that's essentially your training regimen in a week. Well, of those 4 striking times, you're in big gloves 2 or 3 of the times.
Okay.
So this is not something familiar. Like we're in bigger gloves more often than, and we're in 14, 16 ounce gloves when we're on big glove sparring day. When we're hitting pads, we're in big gloves. So little gloves are not an advantage in any way. So
Yeah.
What about going from 5 times 5 minute rounds to 3 times 12? Do you think that will be any issues?
Yeah, it sucks. He has enough time to prep for that. Like my internal timeline, my internal clock is so attuned to 5 minute rounds because 18 years as a pro. You can say, all right, round starts now, and to the second, I can tell you when 5 minutes goes by when I'm training. So you get very accustomed and used to training that. Doing my high interval training, prepping, conditioning, and strength for a fight. It was always directed towards a 5 minute round. It's not a big change, but strength and conditioning coaches, they'll have to be very intelligent about how they are adjusting his body to get used to a 3 minute round.
Yeah, I spoke to John Wayne Parr actually yesterday, and halfway through his kickboxing career, he actually switched to boxing for a couple of years. And he was saying that halfway, when he started fighting 10, 12 round fights, that at the 5th and 6th rounds, that's when it started draining on him, because the ring goer would go past him, and he'd just never been in a 6th or 7th round before, and it just mentally took a huge toll on him. Could you see that happening with Conor as well?
He's as a person, he's very adaptive. And I think it's just going to come down to what he does in his training camp. And if he's smart about preparing in his camp so that his body's used to it, and that his mind is used to it, then it's not a non-issue.
Tim, have you done much sparring with any professional boxers? And in terms of, if you have, what did you find the most difficult thing?
Not kicking him in the head. Yeah. We brought in, at Jackson's, we had pro boxers. We bring, depending on what fight you have and who you're fighting, we'd bring in pro boxers all the time. They'd be in the gym. You'd go, just this last time I went to Freddie Roach's gym and trained there for a couple of weeks, trying to just get ready. And it's not something alien. It's not something strange. It's very normal. And the thing that was the hardest for me was short rounds and not picking up and slamming them, and not kicking them in the head.
What about when you started getting tired? Did you start going away from a boxing stance back into what you kind of knew day in, day out in UFC sort of stance? No? No.
If you... it's like if you're in a wrestling practice and you're wrestling and you start getting tired and you're like, I'll just go back to MMA, then you're just going to suck worse. Like that's counterintuitive. It's the same thing for boxing. So, I know when I'm getting tired, I knew when I was getting lit up and I was taking my lickings, and I knew what I had to do to get hit less. And that's always, going back to good fundamentals and good footwork and good head movement, and all those things take more energy. And, but if you don't do them, then you're just going to get hurt and you're not going to get any better. So, it's this slippery slope of, do you want to get better? Do you want to see how much heart you have, or do you just want to get hit?
Yeah. If Conor was to get the upset, Floyd's 49-0. Is his legacy ruined?
No. Is Floyd's legacy ruined?
Yeah.
No, he's going to go out of his career at 49-1. His nickname, the moniker is Floyd Money Mayweather, and he's about to get paid. So this doesn't change anything for who he has been as an athlete and what he's done in his career. That motherfucker has got paid, and he's about to get paid.
Okay, Tim, final question. Your final prediction for the fight?
Conor hurts him, finishes him in round 8, or Mayweather takes a decision.
Guys, we hope you enjoyed all those analysis. There was something from everyone there that really, makes you think about exactly what's going to happen in this fight on August 26th. there's so many things that can happen. Look, you've got to really favour Floyd, but Conor's always going to be a puncher's chance. He's a great athlete. I think UFC fans are just putting a little bit too much pressure on. I think they've got to realise that this is a totally different sport. And he's fighting the greatest fighter of all time. People say that Floyd ducked a lot of fighters. That is not true at all. Have a look at his resume. I'm going to spit out some names. Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, Miguel Cotto, Shane Mosley, Juan Manuel Marquez, Ricky Haddon, Oscar De La Hoya, Zab Judah, Shambar Mitchell, Atiro Gatti, and Diego Corrales. I don't think you're going to get much better resume than that when you think that he's been trained his whole life by Roger, his uncle, and also Floyd Sr., his father. I think he's seen everything that Conor can actually throw at him, especially in such a limited time space. People think that Floyd struggled against southpaws. That is totally not true. If you actually have a look at a lot of his fights, he actually handles them quite easily. Floyd's got a fantastic right-hand lead and also left hook, so especially that check left hook. What I'm expecting in this fight, in my opinion, I think Floyd's going to stop him in late rounds. I think Conor will come out really, really fast. In those first 2 rounds, I think Floyd will actually just be a little bit cautious, especially, Conor already in the UFC is a very awkward guy, so I'm expecting that to continue in this fight. It's going to be very interesting to see the role the referee plays in this fight. How much will the referee let Conor try to rough Floyd up? Who knows? Injuries do occur, especially in things like clinches. So whoever they select as the referee is going to probably have a huge influence, especially in these early rounds. What I think Floyd does early, like I said, he'll be very cautious. I think Conor will struggle to land. He'll be landing a lot on shoulders and also on gloves. He's going to take a lot more punishment than he's used to. He's going to be hit in the head more times than ever in his career. I think what you will find is when Floyd comes away from the ropes and wants to open up with combinations, you will know that he's really just, feeling pretty comfortable in there. I think he'll go to the body a lot. And like I said, the accumulation of punches will just be very hard for a rank pretty much amateur in Conor McGregor when you think he's had no fights in these sports to try to counteract. But, full hats off to Conor. What are you going to say? No to $100 million? He's having a crack, and I guess that's what life's all about. Actually having a crack. If he does pull it off, he will be considered the greatest, or UFC. Well, I don't think he'd be the greatest upset of all time. And who knows, he might forge a boxing career after that. But like I mentioned, if he roughs him up early, who knows what's going to happen. Floyd is 40 years old. So we saw what happened with Manny Pacquiao growing old overnight. It's happened to plenty of other fighters. So given his inactivity, you wouldn't think so, but it could happen. So I think that's what's really intriguing. I think everyone's going to watch the fight. If you're a boxing purist, there is Canelo versus Triple G. So don't forget that. I think everyone should just have a good time, watch the fight, and just watch. This could be this could be the last opportunity you get to watch Floyd Mayweather in a ring. And it could be the same for Conor McGregor, or you could be seeing the rise of a champion. So it's an interesting fight. Like, one thing that really swayed me towards the stoppage is Floyd's now going assistant. Well, they agreed to move down to 8-ounce gloves. So I found that very, very interesting because, Floyd, it seems, will be going out there on the offensive because with 10-ounce gloves, and he'll be taking a lot more risks possibly because with 10-ounce gloves, I wouldn't think Conor would land too much on him at all. The glove factor is in the defense, especially when you think about head punches. Well, Conor McGregor lands on UFC's fighters because, the actual area that a UFC fighter can cover with 4-ounce gloves is very, very small. So when you think about all the tools that are going to be taken away from him with all his, he can't be doing any kicks and things like that. Just at that level, I don't think he's going to be used to all the different traps that Floyd Mayweather's going to set. On Conor's side, he's got the height, weight, strength, reach, and age advantage, but you just can't buy time. So, in my opinion, and after I've analysed the fight with these 12 great guys, I think Floyd will stop him in the late round, somewhere between that 9th and 10th round, and he'll go out on top 50-0. So guys, thank you for tuning into the show. I really want to really thank all my special guests: Mark Hunt, George Kambosos, John Wayne Parr, Chris Algieri, Stitch Duran, Johnny Lewis, Austin Trout, Jake Shields, Tim Kennedy, Tony Jeffries, Bars Rutten, and Paul Upham. So get following him. Check out the webpage if you haven't yet. Go to www.talkingwithtk.com. I think you'll enjoy, if you're into Australian sports, you're going to really love the programs I've got coming up on that show. And if you're into your MMA and your boxing, check out the Vision Board podcast. Me and my co-host Johnny on that show. We really delve into the minds of a number of champions across both sports. So plenty there for you to check out. If you want to get in touch with me, please send me an email at tristan@talkingwithtk.com, or you can find me on Twitter at tnellfitness, Facebook Talking with TK, or Instagram, hit me up at Tristan Nell. But until next time, this was a special edition of Talking with TK, and I'm Tristan Cannell.